Hi guys, and welcome to another Thoughtscapes. Today I'm going to be talking about how you can leave a toxic relationship. This is some very heavy content, but I hope some of you guys out there find it useful. I have been through a couple of toxic relationships in my life, I have to admit, and these are the strategies that I've used to help deal, understand, process, cope with. 1, recognizing that you're in a toxic relationship. 2, understanding why you're in a toxic relationship. 3, how to leave a toxic relationship. And 4, how to move on from a toxic relationship.
Girl, bye, get out.
A toxic relationship is very simple to explain, but it involves so many complex emotions and issues and baggage. A toxic relationship is simply a relationship that makes you feel bad about yourself constantly. And both people might not necessarily be bad people, it's just the fact that the combination of you two together is just toxic and it brings out the worst in either one person or, at worst case, both of you. And there are many types of toxic people and behavior: controlling, narcissistic, insulting, jealous, manipulative, paranoid. The list can go on, but these are all negative behaviors. But there's one thing all toxic relationships have in common, which is they leave you feeling drained. You're in constant turmoil and you are always questioning how the other person views and feels about you. You're constantly at a loss because you don't understand, and that other person isn't making that quite clear for you. And sometimes it even gets to the point where you really are so drained and over it that you even can check out of reality. Toxic relationships have driven people on the verge or to the point of emotional and mental breakdowns. And you, if you are the recipient of behavior from a toxic person, find yourself constantly trying to skim over the bad and focus on the good. And the reason that you focus on the good is because essentially you are a good person and you are living in hope. You want it to work. You believe that you are strong enough to be able to tide this over, to carry the relationship, to make it work. And that you also recognize flashes of brilliance in that other person. But let me tell you something. I'm going to speak some real talk right now. Those are just flashes of brilliance. It's momentary. If you're looking at everything on the whole, they're just a tiny speck, and you're living for the small instances where you are truly happy versus the majority of just the negativity that this relationship brings upon you. And sometimes you tell yourself, you know what, normally I am an intelligent, I'm a confident, rational person, and even you can stand back sometimes and see the ridiculousness and the futility of your relationship, but for whatever reason you have convinced yourself that this relationship is the exception. Things are going to turn around if you just look at it plainly without all the fuss, taking away all the emotion from it. I mean, it's quite clear to see that it's not working. It hasn't been working for a while. You have tried to mend it already and it's falling on deaf ears. And we're conditioned to believe that we are the masters of our own destiny, that we are strong enough and capable enough to maneuver and steer ourselves out of a certain situation. But what you're forgetting to recognize is that essentially you're putting all that energy and that drive into the wrong thing. And some of you out there might be asking, all right, I recognize that I am in a toxic relationship, but why do I feel the need to leave it? For one, it is going to be a whole lot less drama. Once you let go of that person or that relationship, you will slowly start to find your peace, and there will be a sense of relief. Sometimes it's immediate. When you cut things off, you're like, wow, there's a burden off your shoulders. But then sometimes it's more of a slower journey where you start to come to that slow realization that the more you are away from the toxic person or the relationship, the more you realize how toxic it was. Evil. And slowly but surely you will become less emotional about things and you will regain the sense of control in your life, because a toxic relationship will make you feel like you have no control over anything. And then you also begin to love yourself. Now, not in a narcissistic way. You start remembering how much of a likable person you are, how awesome you are, how much you have to bring to the table. When you're stuck in a toxic relationship, you forget that about yourself. You lose your self-esteem because you're so so consumed in the loss of someone, you can't control them, the failure of your relationship, all that energy is not on you anymore. You're just focused on other things. Whereas when you're out of the toxic relationship, you have that time, you have that space, and you actually have the prerogative to look inwardly and work on your self-esteem. And you just make that space to let light, love, and life back into your world, because being in a toxic relationship is a blocker to positive growth. And the ultimate goal in all of this, in leaving your toxic relationship and not being with that person anymore, is to learn about yourself and appreciation of what you went through, because you had to go through that in order to grow in a certain way. But also another goal is indifference about it. So there's a saying, right? The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And what that means is that if you actually do have hatred in your heart, you're still letting that person get to you. You still have some kind of emotional tie or emotional baggage. And that's not where you want to be. You want to get to the point where if their name is mentioned, if a memory pops into your head, you don't hate them because you don't have that emotional attachment anymore. You've moved on. You're more so indifferent. When someone says, oh, I saw your ex the other day, you're not going to be resentful. It's not going to put you in a bad mood. You're just going to be like, oh, okay, cool. Because that person no longer means anything to you. And for me, that is the marker. That's when you truly know that you have moved on. So then how do you know you're in a toxic relationship? Red flags. Red flags, red flags, red flags. Your red flags might not come all at once, but over some time you have collected all these red flags that you are completely trying to disregard. You're stuffing them under the bed. You don't want to deal with them, but nonetheless they are there. Things that you know aren't quite right, but you've let them slide, or you're choosing to ignore it. You're in denial. Listen to your intuition. And from the other person, there's a sense of dishonesty about them. They lack integrity in terms of they don't do what they say. They don't take responsibility, or they could be wishy-washy, unstable, even unstable in the way that they live their lives. Maybe there's a lack of linearity in their lives. There's a lack of progression. They seem to flip between this, that, the other. There's like no sense of purpose. And a classic for me, and this has happened every time, that's why I've been able to recognize it, is that that person is very hot, cold. They're push and pull, and you never really feel comfortable or know where you stand. And your self-esteem just keeps taking hits. You feel like a punching bag for that person. It doesn't have to be physically, but it's emotional. You keep trying to work at it, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to work out. You never truly resolve the issues, and it doesn't feel like your relationship is growing. And you know what? If you are in a toxic relationship, other people will notice and they will tell you. And the crazy thing is that a lot of people, myself included, have been in a position where I was in complete denial about it. I would tell my friends, back off, you don't understand, my relationship is different. You're just in denial, and the only person who is blind to it is you. You will never be short of warnings from other people. They'll tell you, be careful, I don't trust this person, you shouldn't be spending too much time with them, I think you guys need to take a break. If things start getting worse, people will start telling you that you've changed, and that is another classic, especially people who are near and dear to you and who know you as a person. And then you being told this, that, the other about your relationship, you are going to get super defensive about it. You'll just end up defending them and making excuses constantly. You're not just doing that to your friends, you're making excuses and defending them to yourself. And in extreme scenarios, what that will turn into is you alienating yourself because you don't want to deal with their comments. And when it comes to interacting with that other person, it seems like they don't want to change. They either refuse, or they say they will and they never do it. Sometimes they just give you an ultimatum. It's their way or no way. And more often than not, that person is completely oblivious to their own toxicity. You will never ever get anywhere by trying to fix someone who can't even recognize the flaws and the faults within themselves. It's not enough to think that you can love someone back into health and wellness. No amount of love that you can give can bring a person to that better space unless they see it in themselves. And in this relationship, you feel like the victim, but somehow you have convinced yourself that you need this person, that you cannot live without this person. It's crazy. It is crazy. The reason I'm smiling is because I'm smiling from a place of hindsight. hindsight, because I've been in that position where I felt abused, but at the same time I felt like I could not live without that person, and that's totally wrong. This too shall pass. Just remember that people are so malleable. They accustom and acclimatize to change. Maybe not quickly, but slowly but surely you'll get there. Honestly, you do not need anyone but yourself. The most important thing in life is that you can handle yourself. If you can handle yourself, you can handle anything and anyone. Because you're expressing all of these different erratic emotions or negative emotions, guess what? You have just become a toxic person yourself, because you're paranoid. You don't trust anyone. You're in denial. You're defensive. Hello, wake up. You are becoming that toxic person too. Maybe not in the same way as that person you're dealing with, but in your own way. Dude, you're becoming toxic to yourself. Come on now. If you're constantly living in a state of fear and anxiety, that is not good for your mental health. That's not good for your emotional health. That's not good for your body. Trust me, your body will react. It's crazy how your emotions can really influence your health. Once you have recognized that you are in a toxic relationship and you want to get out of it, but you're struggling, keep a log of all those instances where you have felt stepped on, abused. Over time, if you reread that, you will start to recognize patterns in behavior. When did it happen? What happened just before it happened? What external factors are happening around you to possibly garner that reaction? And then you will start to realize that there are certain patterns in a person's behavior, not just theirs, but also yours. From then on, you can look at it objectively and you can start to change the way you interact in certain situations. Instead of repeating patterns over and over again, try a different tact. And also try the reciprocity assessment. Is basically in every facet of your relationship, ask the question, are they putting in as much? Can they put in as much? If they can and they're not bringing it to the table, you really need to question what your value is in their eyes. And if they're not able to reciprocate, you need to make a very tough decision. So how do you actually cut those ties with that toxic person? Be honest with yourself. Listen to your instinct. That nagging, niggling voice inside you that's saying something's not quite right. I have dumbed that down a lot before. When I felt uncomfortable and I said, look, it's all in your head, it came true, and I should have listened to my instinct from the get-go and nipped that issue in the bud. You have to remind yourself of your worth, your standards, your values before you got into this relationship. I'm sure there were things that you would never tolerate, and now that you're in this relationship, you have tolerated them and probably even been more abused than that benchmark that you set for yourself. You have to realign yourself to those standards and values that you had before the relationship and act immediately. You can spend years trying to make it work, trying to wait for them to change. If they have not changed and you've tried already, cut it off. Sometimes it's good to just go cold turkey on things, because the likelihood is things are not going to get better. Base things on facts, not feelings, actions rather than assumptions. And the fact of the matter is, your relationship is toxic, so what are you going to do now? You move on. Don't let that person take up space in your head. Yeah, sometimes they might cross your mind, but don't let them voluntarily occupy your thoughts. Try to distract yourself, doing something else, being with other people. Anything that you can do to not think about that person, do it. Living in the past or thinking about that person when you're trying to move on is just not healthy for you. It's going to protract the healing process, and limit any associations you have to that person. Anything that might trigger a memory or you thinking about that person. Avoid visiting that bar that you two would always go to. Put away that album that you used to listen to in the car.
I love this song. Making my way downtown.
And naturally, yes, you will fall back to thinking of memories and being nostalgic. And the reason that you do that is because, and this is scientifically proven, our brains are hardwired to remember positive memories over negative memories. I would highly encourage you to create a list of all the things that you had issues with, all the hurts and the wrongs. And whenever you're feeling happy and nostalgic about the relationship, oh, I really miss the way my ex used to do that, or the way we used to do that together, read that note afterwards. Guaranteed it will slap that nostalgia out of you. You're going to be like, oh my days, how did I forget about this? I remember when I broke down crying because of that. And for those really tough situations where you can't just simply cut that person out of your life because maybe they're co-workers, they're family members, or you might have a child with someone, the next best thing that you can do is just set firm boundaries and communicate those boundaries to them. them. Learn to say no. Your time or your finances, just don't give them that extra time. Don't give them the extra money. Anything that they can use to control you. And that way you can limit your interaction, because you have to remind yourself that you don't have to answer to their every whim every time. And when you do receive some form of communication, just think about this, the 3 R's. The 3 R's are retreat, rethink, react. All in that order. Wait before you're so quick to respond. That's when you retreat. Rethink about what you want to say. Is it even necessary to respond? How can my reply limit encouraging more exchanges out of it? And how do I respond in a way that doesn't trigger more of this toxic behavior? And then once you've made that assessment, then you react accordingly. Surround yourself with positive people, those that care about you, who are going to be non-judgmental. Make sure they care enough about you to help you move forward in a very healthy and positive way. It's easier said than done. In essence, you just have to work on yourself and discover the peace and the joy that goes with being by yourself in this season. And get excited about the new doors that are going to open for you. Think of all the things that you can do with all this free time and this free headspace that you're not using on trying to figure out the other person. Fill your time and your life up with things that make you happy, that give you joy, that will help you grow. Go to some classes, do a workout, see friends that you haven't seen in ages, go on holiday. There's so much that you can do with all this free time now. The possibilities are truly endless. And I just want to end it off like this. There's no magic pill on how to get over a toxic relationship. It's going to take time, discipline, and consistency. It's going to force you to do things that inherently you do not want to do. But what it will do is it will help you purge all the toxicity that has built up over the years or months that you have been in this relationship. You need time for all of that to come back out. But just know that you will eventually get out and you will move on. And when you're at that space, can you realize I have truly moved on, the sense of pride, liberation, peace is incomparable to anything. And be proud of yourself. Because it's not easy to get over someone, especially someone who you have spent a good amount of time trying to work it out with them. It's a process and it's uncomfortable. It's going to make you question yourself. It's going to make you cry. It's going to put you through a level of discomfort that no one ever wants. But what you get when you come out the other side is that you've grown and you've become stronger and you've become wiser and better. I'm not saying that toxic relationship is a great thing because when you get out you get this. Speaking from experience, if I could have avoided it, I would have. There's always a silver lining. I'm glad I was able to do all these things, to care about myself, to be disciplined, to not do anything that will trigger stuff, to keep a distance. Things that I didn't want to do but I was forced to do, I did it myself, for myself. And it's up to you to either let that situation make or break you. Anyway, guys, that is my advice on toxic relationships. I hope you found it useful, and I'm just hoping for you guys who are really stuck, who are in that toxic relationship, that you do something about it, because it's so easy to be in that wheel, just turning and feeling disappointed and feeling bad about yourself for years. And that's what I did. I just want to remind you that you are a great person. You can do it. I've done it. So many other people have done it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't tell yourself that I can't live without someone, because you actually can. You can. And you just have to take that first step. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. I'm sending all my love out to you. I hope what I've said today has resonated in some way. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Surround yourself with positive. Good luck to them, wherever they may be. You need a reality check.